Hi, I'm JB Jones,
And I'm Bella Naiman.
and we're the co-founders of NYC Jewelry Week. We are excited to welcome you to our 6th year New York City Jewelry Week 2023.
Welcome to our virtual talks program. On our YouTube channel, you'll get to enjoy incredible content that we've put together for you with the theme of iconography, looking at the past, present, and future of jewelry.
You can see the full schedule on our website at nycjewelryweek.com, and we invite you to explore all the programs there. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Welcome to the NYC Jewelry 2023 virtual events program. My name is Rachael Taylor. I'm a jewelry journalist and author based in the UK, and I'm delighted to be part of this year's scheduling. The theme of this year's Jewelry Week is iconography, past, present, and future. And it's really relevant to the panel discussion that I have the pleasure of hosting for you right now. I have some wonderful guests with me who I will ask to introduce themselves in just a moment. The title of our talk is The Evolution of Legacy Brands. And that word legacy is so important. I think you don't have to search very hard in the world of jewelry to realize that legacy is everything. So whether that's strong storytelling around the history of the brand, romantic folklore about a founder's origin story, or even building engaging narratives about historical techniques used by goldsmiths, it's how we connect past and present and infuse jewels with passion and importance. And each of our speakers today is dealing with the concept of legacy and how to carry that legacy forward in their own way, through family history, through cultural heritage, through design DNA. And I'm really excited to get into each of their stories. So just before we deep dive into that, I'd love to invite all of my speakers to give us a little introduction and tell our viewers who you are and a little bit about the jewelry house that you're representing today. Demetra, I'm going to pick on you. Could we start with you first, please?
Sure. So my name is Demetra Lalaounis. I'm CEO International of Lalaounis, a family business. I run the business today with my three sisters. We inherited a great legacy from my father, Elias Lalaounis. He himself was a third-generation jeweler, but under his own name, he started building his company in the 1960s. And basically, we are continuing his work, his vision about jewelry, about inspiration, about creation, and we're taking it forward. So that's what I do.
Brilliant. And that's some lovely jewelry that we can see up on screen from your brand as well. Corinne, could I ask you next, maybe to talk us a little bit through who you are, who you work for?
Of course. Thank you, Rachel. Just so a few words on myself. So I'm Corinne, and I joined the Dinh company almost 2 years ago now, after spending 20 years in another jewelry house named Cartier. I held a few positions over there. Among them, I was international marketing director, and then in charge of the French market. And I decided to join Dinh, which is a beautiful jewelry house, which was founded in 1965 by Jean Dinh. The name of this house. We'll get back to this again a little bit later on, but as you will understand, Jean Dinh had a very strong vision for jewelry, a very modern one, and to sum up, I would say jewelry for everyone, to be worn every day, everywhere, and that's what's really passionate about Dinh. You can see some pictures of our products on the screen, and our icon is one of our icons, and the best known is Menottes, that will appear in a few minutes.
Thank you. And Gabriel, tell us about you.
Hi, so I'm Gabriel. I work at Sauer. It's a family company, 82 years old. Was founded by my grandfather, who was a Frenchman who arrived in Brazil, and he fell in love with the gemstones and the riches of the Brazilian country. And we have a long history of participating in the main discoveries of gemstones in Brazil since the first emerald mine, or since the use of the first Paraíba tourmaline. and the opals from the Piauí in the northern part of the country, and this passion for design and jewelry with the colored gemstones, it's something that we carry on in our family. And I'm working in the company now for about 10 years. And it's totally, we transitioned the company to the third generation. So now we have myself, my cousin, and also Stephanie, which is my stepsister and is the creative director of the brand.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone. Gabriel, I'm going to start with you. What does legacy mean to you? Obviously, I imagine this is something as part of a family business that you think about quite a lot, and how to move that forward. What does the word legacy mean to you in the context of a jewelry brand?
Well, when you're in a family company, a legacy, it starts with the name of the company, which is the family name, right? So everything we do here, we carry a lot of responsibility because we represent the whole family history and the whole history of how we came about as a business family and as a brand. And it pretty much is our north. Everything we always look inside first of our own history, and the inspirations, most of our inspirations come from things that my grandfather did during his life here in the company. And we have strong values, and even though we always look to innovative and different things that we can bring on to the new generation, we always self-guarded by the values of the company. So I think this is legacy, to something that you can always look and know that you're going in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And Demetra, I feel for you, you've almost got two legacies to uphold with Lalaounis. So you've got your father's legacy, but also this kind of passion for Greek history and jewelry. How have you kind of approached that idea of protecting and also moving forward legacy?
Yes, well, when you're brought up, very much what Gabriel said is all, things that we share as well. We are brought up in the business. We were taken first to the workshop, afterwards to the home after we were born, just to make sure that the DNA filters through us and we can continue the work. And, when you say the name Lalaounis to people that knew him in the 60s, when he revived basically Greek jewelry making, and when he started looking in the past to create pieces inspired by our own culture rather than generic pieces, it means a lot to a lot of people. And it's a big responsibility to be linked with that. And as continuing his work, you always want to make sure that you don't go too far from what he was doing. So there's a lot in that legacy that you want to uphold and continue and remind people, while at the same time taking a step forward. And always, even though we have expanded and looked at the art of all civilizations around the world, not only Greek, you have to always sort of blend that together. So we use Greek techniques when we're inspired by people, let's say, from Northeast Africa. We use granulation, filigree. There's always something that links us to our past and to our heritage, whether it is the source of inspiration or the technique and how the jewelry was made. So for us, it's a link. And obviously, it's a huge responsibility because we want to keep it as important, as good, and better it, and also add our own little, interpretation to what we are creating.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a privilege and a thrill, but is there pressure? Do you feel kind of pressure when you've kind of been handed such a big legacy to keep going, especially when it's got that family connection?
Obviously, you have a responsibility because, as Gabriel said, you have a name, and that name carries a lot of weight to it. So you don't want to do anything to disturb that or to confuse your public or your clients about what it is. But I think after a while, and after you've been involved in it for so long, the pressure goes in the back because you just, you're excited about what you're doing. You're excited about adding things to it, about adding your own input. And you always think about it. It's always there. but I wouldn't say pressure. I'd say, it's a challenge. You always have a challenge. What are you going to create, which is new, which links it to the past, brings it forward? So that takes away the pressure, I think, and also trying to be creative all the time and see what new can you bring out.
Yeah. And Gabriel, do you agree with that? How do you feel about in terms of the pressure of the legacy?
Yeah, like it's different when you have your own brand, right? That you answer only to yourself and to your own standards. When you have a family business, especially when you're in a further down generation, we're in the third generation, the challenges and the pressures are higher because we have, for instance, in our case, we have 7 cousins, so we have 7 different families, right? So people have aspirations and things and thoughts, and we are different people. So we have to keep everyone happy, but we have to be true to the brand. And so it's a lot of pressure. And I think the thing to do that to make everyone, be in the same page is that you have to interact with your family outside of the business, so you can establish good relationship and embrace the different opinions and understand that even though we can sometimes not agree, but we always are in the same standard of values. So I think this is the key.
Yeah. And Corinne, you're coming at this from a slightly different perspective. So you have the legacy of the designer Jean Dinh, but he's not part of the brand. He's sadly passed away. And also you've come from Cartier. You don't have that family connection. How are you dealing with the idea of legacy when you're kind of moving a brand on without the original founder or the family?
So for us, what I would say at Dinh is that legacy is a kind of always on conversation between the past and what the founder brought to the brand and his vision for the brand, and today, of course, and what we want to do for this house. As I was saying previously, in fact, Jean Dinh used to work for Cartier. He was a jeweler at Cartier in the 60s, and he used to work on those most beautiful high jewelry pieces that Cartier knows very well how to make. And at one point, in fact, he really had a very innovative vision for jewelry, and he wanted to make pieces of jewelry creations that could be worn every day, taking the opposite of the work he was doing for Cartier. So that's what led him to create his own brand and own house. So back in 1965. So the vision is really strong. In fact, he's one of the very first inventor of bijoux, I would say in French, and modern jewelry. So this legacy is obviously fantastic. What he did in terms of designs was to be. He was really inspired by everyday life, by object. Everything in Dinh creations is about simplicity in a way, yet sophisticated, universality, and that's what makes, in a way, for me, quite easy to be true to this legacy and heritage, is that in fact universal designs are still so contemporary today and so modern. And if you look at most of our icons, the design is dating back from the 70s and so relevant today.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting to think about design, I think, because obviously you can keep the spirit of the brand, or you can keep kind of the DNA and ethos of the founder going. But when you're having to constantly, or not constantly, but if you're having to make new collections and kind of push that forward, that I suppose is a challenge to kind of keep those references and that DNA, but also keep people excited and new people discovering the brand. So Corinne, could you tell us a little bit about how you're approaching design work now?
So we're very lucky at Dinh Van because this strong vision our founder, Jean Dinh Van, had for jewelry is very concrete in terms of designs and creation. So we have very strong codes in terms of aesthetics. So I have to say that we know very well and very soon when we look at a drawing and then when we look at a prototype, if a creation is Dinh Van or not, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So the job is quite easy, I have to say, and at the same time, it's so exciting to work with. So we work with designers that bring their vision and their vision of today's world to jewelry and how it can adapt to today's creations and what our clients want.
And then I suppose it's up to you guys to decide whether that fits with the DNA and whether that's kind of the right fit for the brand.
Yes, exactly. And it's true that I think it can be difficult when the founder is no longer part of the brand, which is our case, obviously. You could imagine it can be a little bit difficult, but in fact, it's not because codes are strong. There's no blurred codes, if you want, in the brands. So yes, it's quite, we can manage.
Yeah. And Demetra, what's it like at Lalaounis? What's kind of the design process like?
Well, we've stayed in-house. So my sister Maria, we have 4 sisters. She's the third one. She's our creative director. I help her bring in ideas because I'm based outside of Greece. So there's a lot of discussion before a collection. But it's the same philosophy and it's the same idea how my father used to create. And in the 1960s, he said, every piece of jewelry has a story to tell. It's jewelry with a soul. So no matter what we're inspired from, whatever we create, we try to have that same meaning to pass across to the wearer, to whoever decides to, embellish himself with the creations. And she basically, we don't create like other people, probably, obviously in Cartier. We don't design a piece and pass it on to the jeweler. First is a concept of the collection. What is it going to be? Where is it going to be inspired from? And then we think about materials very much because since gold is our main material, stones are only complementary to our design. We decide if it's going to be more 22 karat, 18 polished, brushed. Are we going to introduce a new technique? And sort of it all comes together in one, the source of inspiration with the type of gold and how we want to treat it. And then we bring the source of inspiration to the actual master jewelers and we start creating the piece together. And then the collection grows this way. So it's always, obviously we have, since the 60s, we have a lot of people that are still working with us, believe it or not. And if it's not them, it's a family member. It's very much a family business from every point of view. And the spirit of the creation, the look is indebted into everybody. So it doesn't mean that you don't get away from it as well, especially Lalaounis is basically a lot known for the 22 karat look, for the yellow gold, for the warmth, the hammering. But we have a lot of collections that deviate a little bit of that. And when they do, and they don't remind you Lalaounis because of the yellow gold and the strength of the gold, it's because of the technique or the history. So there are many different points you can associate with the creativity and with what Lalaounis is about. So it's a process which, if you want, is a bit more hands-on. None of us actually is that good of a designer, but we understand the jewelry process very well, and we like to develop things as we go. So that's more or less how we create.
Yeah, and 4 sisters, I mean, is there ever any fiery debates over certain pieces? Are there strong opinions flying around?
Gabriel identifies very well with that, having 7 cousins. We are, of course, each one has a different role. So, for example, my oldest sister, she's in charge of retail in Greece. Then my youngest sister is the director of our museum in Greece, so she's not involved in the business. So it's basically mostly Maria and I that deal with the creation and sort of certain things in the business that, if you want, could possibly create some drama. But it's not to say that a family business, you don't have differences. Of course you have differences, but I think the differences should be embraced, because it's good to have point of views. And sometimes when you have an argument, something positive comes out of it. So it's not all ideal all the time. But I think if your aim is the same, if you feel the same about what you are creating, then eventually you'll come back together and you'll take each other's comments and differences and different opinions and make them work for the best. And I think that's, we've learned to, throughout all these years, I mean, we're not spring chicken anymore, but throughout all these years, you learn how to deal with the differences and how to make them work for you. So I find that, that's the positive that comes out of it.
Yeah, definitely. And Gabriel, you had quite an interesting journey sort of with your grandfather. So he didn't sort of stay on in the business till the very end, did he? He decided to sort of leave at his own time. Could you tell us a bit about that and maybe how that sort of impacted the transition from generation to generation?
Sure. No, actually, differently that from most companies that are family owned, my grandfather, who was the founder, he decided to step down while he was still productive, but he remained as like a consultant, and he started traveling the world and doing trade shows, but he wasn't in the day-to-day business, and he was able to transition to the second generation without being there to interfere in the day-to-day. So he gave a lot of liberty, and he was very selfless, which is not usual. And the second generation had the same approach with us. And I think we should embrace this and keep this going, because when you have new generation coming with a company that is 82-year-old, that have people here that work 30, 35 years in the company, it's really nice to have this melting pot of generations and this mix and this clash, because is this way you always stay fresh, but still the older generations are here to remind you of the values and keep you on track. So I think this is the ideal mix. And I'm here working, and I have to understand that my time here is limited, and I have to prepare the next generation to come and to keep us going forward. So do
you see yourself staying in the business for a long time, or do you think perhaps maybe you'll, I don't know, because you're a lawyer, which I find fascinating.
Yeah. I never thought, like, since we have like 7 cousins, as I mentioned, we always were, influenced by our grandparents to find our own path and not expect to work in the business. And actually, I was invited to work in the business, and I think this is something that it's healthy for the company, So I was going my own way, and when I decided to come here, I committed, and I think I still have a lot of years to go forward, but this is something that is always in the back of my mind. I have a mission here, and I always try to make my plans like for the next 5 years, what I want to accomplish for the next 5 years, and then maybe I can, refocus this plan like 3 years from now and see if I'm accomplishing, if I'm getting to my goals and everything. And I think you have to start making this exercise all the time, just keep you on point and focused in the objectives.
So you're not going to do any wild grabs for power. You would sort of be happy to kind of, if there was another family member that maybe it was their time, you would...
Sure, of course. I think you need to. The company, we pass and the company stays, right? So I think this is the philosophy, and that's why I think we were able and we were successful to make this transition and keep fresh, maintain, bringing new designs and using the whole knowledge that we have here from, as Demetra mentioned, like we have a lot of knowledge from, a goldsmith and techniques, things that, it takes a lot of time, and foundations that takes a lot of time to build. And we were free to experiment using all this knowledge to try and bring new things to the market, you know. And I think it's important for newcomers to come to the business, you know. So we have to be selfless, as the founder was, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And Corinne, can I ask you about storytelling? So you've obviously spent many years at Cartier, where it's very strong storytelling. Dinh has a great heritage storytelling as well. How much does the consumer care about that legacy and that history and that storytelling? Do they just like a piece of jewelry because it looks beautiful, or do they really value that backstory?
No, I think well, our clients do value that story. I think that's probably one of the key elements of choice going to Dinh Van, maybe instead of any other jewelry brand on Place Vendôme. And yes, indeed, history is quite strong. History is a way, of course, to explain as well our designs, the way we create jewelry. So yes, definitely, this is key. Our clients, I mean, all clients, obviously, are looking for meanings, and there's a lot of meaning behind Jean Dinh Van story and the way he wanted to revolutionize the jewelry at that time. So yes, that's definitely something which is quite important for us, and we can see. I mean, that's something, and especially important for me because I believe the designs are exceptional at Dinh Van, and the story behind it is as well exceptional, very unique, very singular. So I think that's something which is important for me and for the brand to tell again and again, and that's something we tend to do more in the recent years. Again, because yes, I think I find our client very curious about it and very keen on learning about the brand.
Yeah, and you've almost had to start telling that story again from scratch. So the brand is hugely famous in France, you know, very iconic. But you've recently started moving into the US more, but that's while the brand has historic connections with the US. Maybe it's I imagine it's a new story for a lot of consumers there. What's it been like, kind of starting those conversations from scratch?
So yes, it's true that it's quite an amazing story. So the link between Dinh Van and the US is again a link between Dinh Van and Cartier. But so when a few years after Jean Dinh Van decided to create his own brand, he was exhibiting some of his creations during Universal Expo in the US, and he has been spotted, in fact, by the teams of Cartier in New York. So what happened at that time is that Cartier New York offered to Jean Dinh Van to create his own jewelry and produce the creations in Cartier workshops in New York, and the pieces were distributed in Cartier boutique in the Fifth Avenue in New York first, and then in a selection of a few boutiques across the US. So in fact, Jean Dinh Van was distributed in the 70s in the US, and it has been distributed for 10 years. Then the story stopped, and he decided to move on to other countries. But yes, it's true that so there's a true and authentic connection between Dinh Van and the US markets and the US clients, and we can see this connection and the American test, I would say, for Jean Dinh Van creations, because in France, so as you were saying, Dinh Van is really strong in France and generally speaking in Europe. But so our first international clientele in France is the American clientele in our boutiques.
Interesting. Because you did some promotion with Emily in Paris, didn't you? Which is obviously, did I get that
Yes,
right?
we did.
Yeah. A very iconic Paris plus America scenario, which I thought was very clever and made huge sense, which is brilliant. Demetra, could you tell us a little bit? Lalaounis has a museum, is that right?
That's right. Yeah, we have a museum which is at the foot of the Acropolis, and it's actually very interesting because that's the place that my father was brought up in. It's the house my father was brought up in, which then was converted to our workshop. And in the early 1990s, the production grew too much to keep it there, and also it was still in the center of the city. So we moved the workshop to the northern suburbs of Athens and converted it to our museum. So basically you can follow the journey because he basically built up his cousin's name before he built up his own name. And in the 60s, he decided to part from them because he believed in, showing jewelry inspired by our heritage. And at the time they disagreed. They thought that that was, just dusty pieces in museums that no one would be interested in. But tourism in the 60s started really growing, and especially a lot of American tourists. When they came to Greece, they wanted to take something that reminded them of their trip, of their journey, of their experiences. So he started first by copying pieces from the museums, and he said, let's see if we can do the same techniques. How good are we in doing that? And once he achieved that, he said, okay, that's a bit limiting. Let's start creating now by being inspired by. So sometimes the inspiration can be very close to the end piece. Sometimes it's just a little detail. And in our museum, we want to show this journey, and we want to show that creativity and how the collections were created, which is very much what we do today as well. So for us, having a story to tell and recount the history behind the collection, what inspired us, we very often show the actual pieces that we're inspired from. And it's very important for that to the people wearing it, because then your piece becomes a conversation piece. It can be a conversation piece and also symbolic. It can have a special meaning to them. Sometimes people think it will bring them luck or fertility or many different things. So basically going to the museum and seeing all that, and then seeing the continuation and how we've continued on that trend is actually quite lovely, because people can identify it. And you're just below the Acropolis. The street is called Caryatides, so there's inspiration all around you.
Sounds magic.
Yeah,
I think I would love to come. I think it's really interesting that he was sort of accused of being too interested in these kind of dusty museum pieces, but now it's come full circle, and you have your own museum, which is fascinating.
He was the third generation in his company. And very much like Gabriel, he had nothing to do with jewelry. He studied law and economics. And during the war, they said, you have to come and take care of the business because we need you. And his cousin wasn't interested. He was into banking. So he went there and basically continued, run the business very well, grew it very well, make it very popular. So popular that the name is still around and people know it. But at some point, when there's a difference in opinions which are so important, and history was very important to him. He was quite an intellectual. He became a member of the Académie des Beaux-Arts et des Lettres in France later on. So history was his life, and sort of not to be able to create with showing that homage to his country and to the art of his country was too important to him. So they decided to split. And of course, when he started doing that in the 60s, then everyone decided what a great idea. And he was actually quite vital in growing the jewelry industry in Greece. So and it's very nice to hear of contemporary jewelers now sort of paying his respects to what he did and how he brought that to the forefront and became very important.
That's brilliant. And Gabriel, I suppose your grandfather was quite renowned for his work with gemstones and perhaps raising the profile of Brazilian stones. Do you have much by the way of archives? This is probably something that's really easy to think about now when we're looking back, but I suppose there's that concept of when you're in the thick of it and you're founding a company, how much do you keep? Or I don't know, have you been left with lots of interesting things in the archives?
Well, we also have our own museum. My grandfather, he was he was a collector of rough gemstones, and he has the biggest private collection of Latin American, and we have amazing pieces that tells the whole history of the gemstones occurrences in Brazil. Pieces that are in the you have like brothers, let's say like siblings that are in the Museum of Natural History in New York. If you go to the gemstone section there, you have, for instance, a huge rubellite, which is from the Jonas mine, which is here in Minas Gerais, a state here in Brazil. And we have a bunch of roughs from this same pocket, right? And he was like, this was something that drove him, and it tells a lot about the history of our company, right? Because he always wanted, when he started doing jewelry, to maintain the biggest part of the crystal once you're cutting the rough. So he wanted to take the perfect stone and not try and see, I can calibrate and have a lot more carats and do smaller jewelry. He wanted to do things that were amazing, and so this was his focus. And I think this pretty much is what we always kept doing, right? Because sometimes when you're thinking about a creation, sometimes I always do a reference with music. And you can write the melody, or you can write the lyrics and then try to do the melody. Several times we start our jewelry from the gemstone. We look at that gemstone and we design inspired by the gemstone that we are trying to do something with it. And sometimes, of course, it happens the other way around. Like you think of a design and you search for the gemstones to fit that design. So we have a lot of archives, and actually this year we are launching a collection which is called Heritage. Now, it's just out, which is something that we look back to, designs from the past, and we try and bring it refreshed and in a different approach with different stones and different colors and everything in the mix. So
that's fascinating. Corinne, obviously you don't have a museum yet for Dinh Van.
So we do have.
We are going through. This is
no, don't
brilliant.
be over excited. We have a private museum, I would say, as of now. No, what we have, as Gabriel and Demetra was stating, it's key for us and very important for the brand and to be able to preserve our heritage. So we have, in fact, a large collection of photographic archives, because in fact our founder Jean Dinh Van didn't draw, so he was a jeweler, so he was a man of metal and of sculpting metal, so he was not drawing. In fact, he had an idea in his mind, and he was directly going into the metal and the gold to create the design. So what we have is a lot of photographs as archives, and we do have a lot of creations now. And this is something that we're still doing. In fact, we are creating our own museum, so it's not yet a public one, and we are hunting for creations as well. That's part of the things we do to continue, in fact, to enlarge this collection. And this is something I would love to be able to do. We're thinking about it. The brand will celebrate its 60 years anniversary in 2025. So that's something we're currently looking at, thinking about how to celebrate this legacy and history, and of course showing and showcases historical pieces will be hopefully one of the key elements of this celebration, and looking at doing it in Europe, of course, but as well in the US and in Asia.
That'll be exciting. Yeah, that'll be an exciting next chapter of your history. We're going to wrap up shortly, but just before we do, I'd love to ask you, we've spoken a lot about kind of the idea of what's happened in the past, how we've made icons, how they're brought forward, but I just want to finish by maybe asking you all what's next for your respective brands. So Demetra, maybe I'll start with you, kind of what's next? What's in the future for you?
Well, you always continue creating. Creativity, it's at the forefront of everything. And with creativity comes innovation. So you always want to see how can you make, how you can keep having a brand relevant in today's world with everything that's going on. So you have to take a lot more into consideration than back in the 60s and 70s and even 80s when there were less worries in the world. So when you create, you just want to be respectful of the climate. You want to be respectful of the different types of clients you may have. You want to increase your price range, makes it very, very accessible. Create pieces for all day, create pieces for the young, for your older clientele. There's a lot more considerations, I think, in when you are creating, and that shouldn't take away from the creativity itself and from the collection that you're going to launch and how much you're going to put into it. But I think it's just moving with the times and keeping the brand relevant. So keep creating, keep making pieces that can excite your clients, that can you keep up the following. We have a lot of clients that have inherited pieces from their grandparents. It goes down the generations. You teach them how to wear it today, how to make it more fun. We believe in the jewelry. We create something, but then it's how you're going to wear it that will bring it the most out of it, will make it look its best. So make the jewelry your own. So as much as it's great to sell also online, I like the one-to-one contact with the clients to see what suits you, what makes you look best, what you like. So we don't want to lose that contact with the clients. So we will become more and more involved with online. We have obviously a site and our Instagram and everything, which is great because you can reach many more clients than you did before. So we will go with technology forward, but at the same time we want to keep it more intimate, more personal, and keep that relationship. And I think that's what we can achieve in a family run business, is that we're always close to the buyer. We're always there for them. Anyone can pick up the phone and call me, make an appointment and see me, and see how we can take care of them in the best way possible while continuing with our creativity.
Brilliant. Gabriel, what's next for you?
Well, something that it's really common, I think, between our companies here is that either you're in Greece, in France, in Brazil, we are in countries that receive a lot of people from all over the world, right? So here in Brazil, we always, sold our pieces to French, to Americans, to Greeks, and we are now focusing our expansion abroad, especially in the US. We are already selling in the US in a couple of retailers, and we're now looking into opening our own store there in New York. So hopefully by the end of the first semester of next year, we're opening a store in New York. So we are really thrilled and excited about this because we have a lot of American clients already. But it's something that I think in this moment of our company and our generation, we are really in the right spot to take this next step. So this is what next for the next year at least.
Yeah, that's huge. I'm imagining an NYC Jewelry Week 2024 party at your boutique then.
Sure, please. Let's arrange this, of course.
Sure. I have to hold you to this.
We're expecting an invitation.
We will, of course.
And to him as well. I'll be delighted to come.
Sure, and I would next time I'm in Greece, I'm certainly going to your museum as well. Let's change contacts here and
forward to.
Yeah,
we can make this a whole series. This could be great, traveling around. And Corinne, what's next for you? What does the future look like?
So what's next for us is, of course, creation and working on new designs, new interpretation of our icons, and that's something which is really key for us, and it's as well part of our duty, I would say, to continue to create this creative patrimony that we must develop. And of course, as I mentioned, in fact, our big priority today is to build this 60 years anniversary celebration that we started and we're thinking about, which we think being as much as possible international. As I was saying, our core market and core clientele is France and Europe, but we have big plans, as Gabriel in the US. We're already quite. We have a strong presence in the US and Canada, but we really aim at developing it and expanding our footprint in the US and continue our adventure in Asia with China and Korea. So quite a few exciting and very exciting projects for us.
Yeah. I think everyone's going to definitely be busy over the next year or two. Well, I cannot thank you enough for your time. It's been such a fascinating discussion. It's been so wonderful to hear your stories and your ideas on legacy and how to kind of keep brands evolving. And thank you to everyone who's watched as well. I hope you've really enjoyed it. I hope you found interesting pieces of information, maybe some inspiration if you're thinking about perhaps building your own legacy or how you want to keep the legacy of a larger brand that you work with going. So thank you, everybody. And to all our viewers, have a wonderful NYC Jewelry Week. I hope that you enjoy it and also that you tune into lots more of the fantastic content that we have in the digital program.